Number one, what did you think of Zach Thompson today, and what do you think about Zach Thompson in general? Do you think he's starting to show that there's something there and something that requires a more in-depth look? It's been kind of fun to see it. What do you think about all this?
Yeah, I think there's the potential for that. I actually have it on my list to do a little deep dive into if he's doing anything differently, or if there's anything about it that looks sustainable and that sort of thing. But you have to like the results so far, particularly him, his getting some strikeouts and that kind of thing. And I think the success he's had is particularly impressive considering how poorly his effort to become a starter went in AAA. That just looked like a disaster. And I was very skeptical when they, decided to bump him into the rotation here because of injuries and trades and that kind of thing. But he's done really well so far. So I think there's whatever's there merits further investigation. And him and Hudson are making a statement. And I think you might end up with some interesting competition for that fifth spot next year, assuming the Cardinals, as they say they're going to, add 3 starters from outside the organization.
Yeah, I know that Mo has said that. John Mozeliak has said that repeatedly now. I still have a feeling it might end up being 2 starting pitchers and then 1 within. But if a guy like Zach Thompson shows that he's capable of doing it, after all, he was a first-round pick. It's not like he's some guy who's pitching in the independent league or whatever. He did come here with credentials. So we'll see. It's interesting. I got to tell you too, and I'm surprised at myself. I'm not getting carried away, and I'm very much in tune with all the underlying factors that say, I'm talking about Dakota Hudson, but I give him credit. I mean, they need starting pitching. He's done a nice job of being competitive and consistent, even with the underlying stuff. But do you think the underlying stuff's going to eventually end the party?
I mean, I'm kind of an eternal Hudson skeptic as a starter, and the sample size keeps growing and he keeps having success. I still like his potential as sort of a volume multi-inning reliever, and I think there's definitely going to be a need for that next year. So maybe that's it. But he continues to have success as a starter, and I think that there's some evidence he's improved his slider, and maybe that's helping out. So, we'll see. But I think I'm more enthusiastic about Thompson's potential as a starter. I'm kind of giving a continue to wait and see policy toward Hudson. But, at the very least, they're both interesting so far.
And no doubt about it. Hey, I want to ask you about there's always stuff to ask you about. The Cardinals are not they have had a bad year and all that, but they're always interesting. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing that they have this is their worst season in a long time, and yet there's so much to talk about. I mean, they're not boring because it seems like the pot's stirred all the time with thoughts. Yeah, there's a lot to chew on. So anyway, since Tyler O'Neill came back July 20th, I believe, right after the break, his numbers are good. They're not 2021 good. And he's not hitting the ball as hard as he did in 2021. In fact, he's hit the ball. He hasn't even hit it as hard as he did early in the season. His sprint speed is down. Hard hit rate, again, doesn't come close to where he was in 2021. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, so the question is always about him. Can he stay on the field? But if you're the Cardinals, what do you try to do? Do you try to trade him? But what if you don't get much of an offer for him? Do you keep him another year and just kind of roll the dice, so to speak? What would President of Baseball Operations Dayn Perry do?
Oh boy, nobody wants that. I think I would probably try to work him into a larger package in exchange for maybe an impact starting pitcher or something along those lines, or fill other needs. I just don't know if I trust him to be thought of as a regular on an aspiring contender, which is what they want to be next year. The health, as you noted, and just the very erratic history of production, I just don't know if it's there for me to bank on him for a central role like that. Particularly, it's a nice and balanced lineup, and, the offense has hardly been the problem this season other than some, struggles in clutch situations and that kind of thing. But, I just don't know. I think he kind of lowers that ceiling a bit for that offense as a regular, and I just don't know if I like him in that role. I don't know if I like, Dylan Carlson in that role either. I just don't know if I like that third outfielder situation right now outside of Newt Barr and, of course, the tremendous potential for Jordan Walker. So, yeah, I think I'm inclined to move off O'Neill. You're not going to get much for him straight up, but I think he can be intriguing as part of a package that you send to another team.
Dayn Perry from the Birdie Work Cardinals blog on Substack. Just enter his name, Dayn Perry, D-A-Y-N, Perry, and then just Birdie Work, and you'll find it. You'll find a link to it, and you can get subscription information. It's worth every penny, and the cost is not prohibitive. Cost is the exact opposite of prohibitive. So I love it. Joe Sheehan loves it, so we encourage you to do it. Plus, Dayn throws in some extras as well, like chats and mailbags, things like that. So anyway, all right, tell us about, and again, my point is not to get you to read your, tell us your whole blog on this.
No, not at all.
But what are the main takeaways? You did your dive into Alec Burleson, trying to see what's been happening with him, what you like. Tell us what your findings were.
Yeah, I think the big thing about Burleson is that he's just a rare blend of contact skills and some capacity for hitting the ball hard. He's got an average exit velocity north of 90 miles per hour, which is solidly above the MLB average. And he just has an elite contact rate and elite low strikeout rate. And, there's really only one other guy who kind of compares right now, and that's Pasquantino for the Royals, and he's probably a better hitter than you think he is just when I say that name. And, the way Burleson has handled fastballs throughout his very brief career so far is encouraging. He does have a tendency to chase, as you would expect from a high-contact free swinger like him. And I think there's an opportunity to tune that up and, improve his production even more. So I think the piece you mentioned is at once an appreciation of what he is, which is, I think, a very interesting piece moving forward, and also a look at how he can kind of take that next step as a hitter and just be a very useful piece, whether it's in St. Louis or as part of a trade this winter, who knows. But I think, particularly as a platoon guy, I think he has some real value moving forward.
Dayn, I don't think there was much to take away from Drew Rahm's first start. I kind of felt bad for him, and even his next assignment's going to be at Philly. That's going to be good luck with that. But
right.
But I do want to see more. I do. I'm not being a softie here, but I do want to see more. And do you have any observations on any of these guys yet that they got in these sequence of deals at the trade deadline? What about Sajasi, that middle infielder who's tearing it up, and Cesar Prieto, who they got in a Flaherty trade, who part of that deal, middle infielder who's another great bat-to-ball guy. Is anybody catching your eye in a meaningful way, or is it too early? And sometimes we all get a little overheated with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I need the voice of reason. That would be you.
I'm really encouraged by Sajasi so far. I think he's a guy, What's he, 21? Has he turned 22 yet? But whatever the case, he's just putting up tremendous numbers. Contact skills are there. Not a lot of swing and miss. He has some power. And, you have to love what he's done so far since the trade. I mean, he's just put up tremendous numbers. And I think he's an interesting guy, particularly as a guy who can play multiple infield positions. I know he's not an elite fielder, but I think he's a guy who can fill some roles. I just think he's pretty interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing, if he continues the hot hitting, if he, finds his way to a promotion this season and that sort of thing. So I don't know. I think he's a guy to keep an eye on. Rahm, I don't know. I don't know that he has the stuff to get major league hitters out in a starter's role. I just think he's a guy that, he kind of depends on chases outside the zone, and I'm just not sure he's going to get those against MLB hitters. I do like that arm angle and the way he attacks left-handed batters. So I think maybe has a viable future as a reliever. And, there was some good self-awareness, I thought, on his part and some of his post-game quotes from that, start he had from his debut. I mean, he admitted, I'm rushing things. I'm I'm shortening my stride, I'm trying to muscle it, and I need to not do those things. And, I don't expect great results against a team like the Phillies, but I would like to see a little more of a deliberate pace from him and maybe some, exuding a bit more confidence and that kind of thing. So I think he's at least aware of what's going on, and I think, again, that arm angle and some of that stuff makes me think he can be a guy out of the bullpen against left-handers especially.
Yeah, and we're all looking forward to seeing Roby. The pitcher is going to return to action this weekend after the Rangers had shut him down in their Double-A team just to be safe, with a shoulder thing. But he's ready to resume, so I'm really looking forward to that. Let me ask you this: going back to the fact that they did pick up these two middle infielders in deals, and both of them appear to be good hitters. So now whether it translates to major league success remains to be seen. But again, you nailed it. I mean, the contact skills, both of them, but also with Sajaci, he's got what you call easy power. He really does. There's nothing strained about his swing. It's just nice and smooth. So anyway, do you think I'm asking you to read their minds, but we do that anyway. Do you think that getting those guys had to do with anything swirling around in their minds about how, we might have to move one of our middle infielders if we want to get a pitcher? We might have to move an Edman or a Donovan. I hope not a Gorman, but you think that's part of the thinking, or they just like the talent?
I would guess it's a mixture of both. But yeah, I think certainly they realize that if they're going to add, a controllable front line-ish starting pitcher through trade, they're going to have to pay up. If it's a guy like a Dylan Cease or, whoever, or maybe somebody from the Rays system, and then whoever's left healthy, that kind of thing, they're going to have to pay up. And they're going to have to pay up in major league talent or reasonably high ceiling minor league talent. Maybe, these two infielders that they added, give them some depth there that they can tap into. And, part of me also wonders if prioritizing these contact hitters is sort of a reaction to the way they've struggled with allowing contact. And, maybe we need some of these guys that are killing us because we can't strike anybody out, Part of me wonders if that's going on as well. But whatever the case, adding that depth and giving them flexibility when it comes to off-season trades is a welcome thing. And I think it allows them to maybe attack more angles when it comes to trying to land a starting pitcher through the trade market.
Dayn Perry, one or two more quick things with you. Dayn Perry for CBSSports.com, but also, of course, Birdie Work, Cardinals blog on Substack. I tell you what, there hadn't been many things this season where kind of makes you smile, brings a little pleasure to watching Cardinals baseball. But I've had a lot of fun watching Andrew Knizner all of a sudden become like a dangerous power hitting threat. It's really been incredible in a way, and I give him a lot of credit. But do you think this will? I don't even know what their thinking is on catcher, and we all know they have a really terrific prospect in Ivan Herrera. So I don't know what they're thinking. But man, it seems to me it would be a little more difficult for them to give Knizner the boot as far as making someone else the second guy, or I don't know. I'm really confused by it. But Knizner's made a case. What do you think, though? Or is it not enough of a case? Or is it you haven't seen enough of this? But his power has been remarkable this year.
I mean, it's underpinned by changing launch angle and hitting the ball a lot harder than he ever has in the past. And that kind of stuff suggests it's legit. And, the Cardinals have a rich history, if you will, of backup catchers who cannot hit at all. And Knizner has been a very pleasing exception to that this season, and I am really surprised by it. I mean, I was bagging on his offense for years, and last year he was definitely part of the problem from that catcher position at the plate, and this year he's part of the solution. And I just didn't see it coming, not at an age where hitters tend not to make those sort of adjustments, and it's really encouraging. I think he's got significant trade value, but I also think he's a guy now that the Cardinals have to think about keeping in the mix, depending on what they do with Herrera and depending on if they determine that Contreras is their primary catcher moving forward. So I think you've hit on one of the most interesting subplots of the offseason, and that's which of these three catchers emerges as the primary and the backup. Are all three still in the organization by the time we get to opening day 2024? If not, who's gone? I think that's, in addition to fixing the rotation, I think this is one of the most interesting things to watch this winter.
I was looking, I went to Fangraphs and I was looking, I haven't written about it. I did talk about it at length yesterday's show, but I was looking at, I went team by team, and I was looking about the kind of the allocation, playing time of catchers. And I was surprised that I shouldn't have been. There's a lot of teams, good teams too, that actually sort of go with an unofficial two-catcher system, and they use the DH as an outlet. The Baltimore Orioles do that. McCann catches a lot more than people would believe, and they use Adley Rutschman as a DH, which I think is really smart, saves wear and tear on him, and it can work. I mean, you have two really good hitting catchers down in Texas. They don't have a problem finding enough swings for both of those guys. And there's other examples. So the problem, I guess, or the challenge, I guess, for the Cardinals, it's just that, if Herrera wasn't there knocking on the door, I think we would all agree, well, look, you go with Contreras and Kisner next year. But that complicates it. So I don't know. I don't know what I would do. I mean, I'm glad I don't have to make the decision. I do think it's premature to just we better get Contreras out of here. I mean, I just think that would be a gross overreaction,
Yeah, I agree. I think trading Contreras is just a mess and an ugly look, and I don't think that's the path they should take. Yeah.
My friend Dayn Perry, you're always generous coming on, man, and Birdie Work is great, and it's only going to get better and better and better. Birdie Work blog on Substack. You all need to check that out and subscribe to it. You'll be happy that you did. And, of course, read Dayn Perry at CBSSports.com and follow him on Twitter at Dayn Perry, D-A-Y-N Perry. And until next time, man, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bernie. Always appreciate it.
See you, buddy. That's our friend Dayn Perry. Yeah, I don't know what to do. It's so amazing, and I talked about this yesterday, but I'm going to talk about it in a different context. I will not be the angry man, Jim Hewer. I won't. I will not be the angry man.
I don't know about that.
But no, it's like, isn't it funny though? You have basically one catcher for 20 years, not quite 20, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And you never had to, other than the times he's had rare injuries, and you're the number two will play a little more. Fill in for a couple weeks, or there's maybe been one or two times when Molina was here where it was longer than a week or two, but you just never had to worry about, well, who's the backup, well, who's going to play here, which catchers do you pick? What a luxury and a blessing, baseball blessing that was, to just not have to worry about that position at all. And, the old it rains, it pours. Now you have Contreras, who's, really having, after that really slow start at the plate, because I think he was trying too hard and all that stuff. But since he settled in, I mean, he's a fantastic hitter. Kisner's been a revelation. And we know Herrera is a really impressive young catcher. I don't see a problem from the standpoint of, for the longest time, Yadier Molina was your catcher, and you never had to think about, well, hey, we got this hotshot catcher down here, and so we can trade him, which is what they did to get Paul Goldschmidt with Carson Kelly. But it caused no pain to trade Carson Kelly because Yadi still had a long time to go. So, the question I have is whether the Cardinals will be smart enough to make the right decision. And will they be able to maximize a return if they decide, hypothetically, to trade Herrera or Kisner, if there's increased interest in Kisner. It's really fascinating. It's a fascinating situation, but they can actually benefit from it if they play it right.
I will be interested to see when they go to shopping to see, they're going to need pitching. I want to see what the value is, the perception is from outside of the Cardinal organization on these guys. I would think, based on some of the stuff we've seen from Herrera, Bernie, I mean, his hitting has been very good this year. the time he was here, and I don't get to see a lot of games in Memphis, the time he was here, he sure seemed to improve on where he was a year ago defensively. Yep. I would be curious to see how other organizations look at him and what his value would be in the market. I'm not saying the Cardinals should just go ahead and trade him, because the same would be said of Andrew Kisner and his added, his improved offensive production this year. Where would the value be outside of the Cardinal organization if he is brought up in conversations in player movement? I would think both would be pretty, or at least much higher than they were this time a year ago. And I just don't know where that would fit in, but I would think both would be in that conversation. If you went with the Contreras conversation, I don't necessarily know that there's a great value based on what we saw a year ago in free agency. It seemed to me, at least, it was the Cardinals and the Astros were knocking on the door a little bit. I don't know there's a lot of people going to want to go around, especially with that contract hanging over their heads. So,
well, that's right.
It's going to be an interesting watch on what the value is if the Cardinals trying to move one of those guys. Because there is intrigue because of the improvement of Kisner, because you have to give him credit for what he's done this year. And then I really like Contreras from what I saw. And every time I look down at the stat sheet down below, he keeps hitting the baseball. So there's got to be something there. And I don't necessarily know I want to give up on that, but you can't have three of them up here, because that'll never work in this organization. But
yeah, because even Toronto had three guys, legitimate guys, catching last year. Moreno being the baby of the group, like their version of a Herrera, let's say.
Yep.
And, they traded him. I think a deal kind of worked out for both them and Arizona. I think it worked out well. They traded Moreno. And I was surprised that he was the one that they moved because, Kirk's a really good hitter. The other guy who I'm drawing a blank
Jensen.
on him. Yeah, Jansen. Jansen's been a good hitter. I mean, not as good as Kirk. But that it was interesting that they were finding time, and they weren't able to do it the way they wanted to. But they had three catchers in the mix, and they realized, hey, this ain't going to work. But we can move one of them and make our team better in other areas. So the Blue Jays could be a good guide for the Cardinals as far as what do you do when you have two catchers that you like at the big league level who can hit, but you have this rising young star in your system. So what do we do here? Again, the Blue Jays offer a guide, a template, if you will, to how you handle this. It's 4:27 in St. Louis on the Bernie Show. We're almost halfway through. Cardinals win today in Pittsburgh, 6-4. And nice job by Zach Thompson, a 5-inning start, giving up 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts, that's the kind of thing you're looking for. And they had several guys contributing. We'll get into that a little bit. Before we take a break, and this is the Ambassador Midwest Floor 4 o'clock hour, producer Dave Solomon texted this a little while ago, and I appreciate it, just as Dayn Perry was coming on. So the Orioles have scratched Jack Flaherty from tonight's scheduled start. They said general soreness. I have no idea what that means.
Oh, boy.
I know his last start, he did not look good. He did not look right. I did not think at the time, honestly, though, it's like, oh, man, something's hurting him. Physically, there's something going on there. I just thought it was one of those kind of weird Jack Flaherty starts where, he just can't get the ball in the zone, and it looked like one of those starts from early in his season with the Cardinals. So I don't know what's up with that. I hope he's all right, but I actually kind of like that trade that I like what they got for him potentially anyway. So
yeah.
But I hope it's listen, man. I'm an Orioles fan, and I hope for that sake alone, but also for Jack. I don't want to see the guy hurt. I hope this is nothing. I hope he just has to skip a start. So if I have a chance to watch the game tonight later on, delayed, I'll do that.